Welcome back to my channel, guys. Today I want to talk about the co-opting, we'll say, of LGBT identities, meaning people who are not actually LGBT as far as we know. They're not gay, they're not trans, they're not bi, but they seem to adopt an LGBT persona in order to make profit, in order to achieve a next sort of step of fame through getting more publicity, more attention perhaps. That's what I want to discuss in this video. Let me start by saying that I'm aware making this video, there's a few sort of caveats, I guess we can say, in that it's a huge claim for somebody like me or anybody to say like this person's not really gay or trans. It's like I'm aware that that's a very dangerous like slope to in the same way that it's not cool to out somebody. I don't think it's cool to like say, well, this person's not really gay or not really trans. We don't know somebody's sexuality ourselves, or somebody's true gender identity or whatever. But you also notice after a while, right? Like some people seem to just cling on to whatever will get them attention in that moment. And what a weird world that we now live in, where it's like the cool thing of the moment to come out or to share that you're non-binary or trans or whatever. And I think generally people are accepting when it seems to be genuine nowadays. In American society, I think most people are like, oh wow, good for this person for being vulnerable. But I do think there are some instances that for me as a gay person are like cringeworthy because it doesn't feel genuine. And so that's really what I want to tackle in this video. Oh, and the other caveat that I wanted to mention is if you look hard enough, it's really easy to find hypocrisy in people's behavior. Like we're all complex people who don't always say or do rational things. This idea of like queerbaiting is basically, I guess, what this concept is, this co-opting thing that I'm mentioning. It's called queerbaiting, right? When you try to bait people through using queer behavior, queer language, which is like more problematic if the person's not actually queer, right? Or doesn't seem to otherwise show any signs of queerness. But truthfully, this is something that impacts, I think, like every community. It's kind of like every Halloween, people will wear costumes related to a certain culture or a character of a culture. I remember years ago, I dressed up as Aladdin, and my boss asked me if anybody gave me a hard time, and I was like, no, like, don't make this into a thing. It's not, Aladdin is a character from a Disney movie, and before that it was just like a fable, I guess. Like that's a character. But he was trying to imply like, oh, well, people, I don't know, nowadays maybe people would get offended that it's like a Middle Eastern caricature. So my point is like, I'm aware that me making this video is potentially the same sort of energy that my boss was trying to imply. I'm aware that the more we sort of poke at these things of like, you're appropriating somebody's culture, right? You're appropriating this community, you're appropriating something that you're not. I'm aware that it goes into problematic territory of telling people who they are and who they aren't and what they're allowed to present as, which is inherently a very anti-modern mindset, right? To tell somebody you are this, so you must act this way. I'm aware of that sort of hypocrisy as a gay person. Hopefully this is making sense. But to go back to the original concept of this video, there's certain celebrities who come to mind, right? I'll never forget that kiss, I want to say at the VMAs, Madonna, Britney, Christina, mid-performance, done purely for shock value. And I love that like meme of Mary J. Blige just being horrified because that was so many of us still, I think, watching that and feeling like it's queerbaiting 101. It's a lesbian kiss on a stage purely for shock value, not because they're actually lovers, not because they're actually lesbians, but purely just to incite controversy. From that event all the way to Katy Perry's first hit song, I Kissed a Girl.
What do you think about songs nowadays like Katy Perry's I Kissed a Girl? Do you like that song? I don't think she's kissed a girl.
And now every other Tuesday we have somebody coming out as queer, fluid, non-binary. And again, I don't know each of these people's stories, right? I'm sure some of them are genuinely questioning or it's taken a lifetime to come to this conclusion for them. And I will say, even just walking around, I now see more trans people than I've ever seen. I was at the airport the other day and I saw at least 3 trans people at the Philadelphia airport, and I was like, when did this happen that we just see more trans people? So a part of me is like, okay, the world is maybe awakening. People are more aware of what feels natural to them, and that's a beautiful thing. But I can't help but feel that with those celebrity examples I just gave, that some of these people are doing it more so to fit in to a community of misunderstood misfits that spend a lot of time introverted at home on social media, feeding financially the careers of people like this because suddenly they feel they might have this public figure that they can actually connect to. And maybe that's the conspiracy theorist in me, I don't know. But I look at somebody like Demi Lovato and I just feel like every time she's in the news, it's like there's a new revelation about her journey as a person, as a woman, as a queer person. It just feels, to me, it feels very manipulative and it feels very disingenuous. And as a gay person, it makes me wonder how many non-gay people, how many non-LGBT people see that and they think that's how all gay people are. And so now we get into this bizarre limbo thing where you have people who are authentically gay or authentically trans and they've known it forever and they've gone through hell and back, and especially as it pertains to trans people, they might have gone through surgeries, they might have gone through hormone therapy, and then you have people who casually are co-opting that identity without really doing any of the physical, mental, or emotional work or the journey, the evolution to get to being more complete, let's say, as the person they believe they really are. And it somehow, I think, discredits the journey of people whose story has never changed, who have always been gay, trans, and so on. Does this make sense? This reminds me a lot of Rachel Dolezal. Do you guys remember Rachel Dolezal? This was the woman years ago who was a white woman, but she lived as a black woman. She presented as a black woman. She would tan, she would do things to her hair to make it present as black, even though she was white, meaning hair that would be natural to a black woman versus a white woman. And seemingly she did this to more seamlessly integrate herself into her local black community because she was involved in a lot of local causes, if I remember right. I want to say I could be wrong, I want to say she was also a professor of African American studies. So her presenting as a black woman kind of helped her navigate maybe certain rooms, both literally and figuratively, perhaps more easily. But again, it was disingenuous. And if you guys remember that story, it was very controversial. People were very upset because she was co-opting an identity that was not hers. And even looking at the backlash of that, and the reaction was so interesting because you saw people get so passionate and so angry at her manipulation, which I think parallels this phenomenon that I'm talking about with queerbaiting from seemingly non-queer people, especially if it's a group that's still marginalized or ostracized in some way. It's like the last thing they need is somebody making them look bad who's not even really a part of that community. Again, I'm aware that this is a tricky conversation though, because then you get into this territory of saying, well, you're not really gay, or you're not really trans, or you're not really this. And it's like, it's not really my place or anybody's place to tell somebody who they are or who they aren't, particularly as it pertains to something that you can't even see, something very subjective like sexual orientation that we all know by now is pretty much a spectrum, right? Or the gender that somebody feels more connected to being. I've said a lot. I'm curious what you guys think. I gave a few examples, but I'm sure there's others that I haven't even thought of. On the one hand, I think it's great that we're even in a place to have these conversations. When I was a kid, if I had known that Ricky Martin was gay, it would have been like, changed my life to know that somebody like Ricky Martin could be, not only could be, but was gay. So the fact that we're now in the opposite extreme of every other person is claiming to be something, it's an interesting evolution. It's like a jarring, swinging of the pendulum, but I do wonder how beneficial it really is in the long run. Let me know what you think in the comments.